Welcome to the ShowShow with your host, Uncle Wobbly. I am Uncle Wobbly, your host. Hi. Welcome. Second show. So the show, I review movies and TV shows I watch because I feel bad about myself for wasting time by watching them, and I want to trick myself into thinking that I'm doing something productive. I know I'm not. So I made a list of a bunch of movies and TV shows that I think I'm supposed to watch. Right now I have up to 214 titles. It's on IMDb, a great website, which is no way giving me money. I don't know why I keep name dropping them, but I like them and I'm using them. So go IMDb. Then I use a random number generator to pick one, and I watch it and I review it, reflect on it, meditate it, read it. And I did kind of bad. I broke the rules, or I'm going to break the rules with you now. So the random generator, the number it told me to watch turned out to correspond to the movie called Wild at Heart. It's a David Lynch film, and also a Nicolas Cage film. If you can... Also, Nicolas Cage! So, yeah, get your head around that. A Nicolas Cage film and a David Lynch film. It's truly dark, and that was one of the reasons why, one of the two reasons I'm breaking the rules. One is I don't have the heart right now. I don't have it in me to watch a movie as bad as I know, or as dark as I know a movie starring Nicolas Cage, written and directed by David Lynch, could be. I mean, if that goes the way that it looks like it's got to go, I just don't have it in me tonight. And the other reason is because I forgot some things I had on the list, kind of with plans to see them in a certain order. And I added a bunch of Lynch to the list because I love Twin Peaks so much. And I like the guy. I've seen him in interviews and stuff, but I just love Twin Peaks and Fire Walk with Me. The man has purchased on part of my soul. And so I'm sure that I like Blue Velvet and probably Lost Highway and some of the other classic-y Lynch films. But I want the whole Lynch experience. I feel like, for better or worse, I started with Twin Peaks. But now that I'm on board, I want to go back and kind of do chronological. I'm not going to do all the piddly stuff because he's really big on collaborations and weird little films released in France no one ever heard of and stuff. I'm going to try to hit the big ones. So I'm going to try to do it kind of chronologically. That brings us to Dune. And Dune would probably be on the list even if it weren't for Lynch, because I have some really foggy memories. Some of my earliest memories are briefly living in California in the desert and watching my parents watch Dune. And I don't know about you, but when I was that age, I kind of trusted that there was this moral system. My parents knew what was right and wrong and good and bad, and that any teachers or church leaders or whatever else they kind of entrusted me with subscribed to the same system and also knew what was good and bad. Any television programs I watched that people liked and were motivated about were tied into the same sort of morality, and the whole world was there agreeing on what was right and wrong, and etc. So when I saw a movie like Dune, I didn't critically, like, I didn't examine the validity of the message. I just tried to understand how the message was right, and if I couldn't understand, I just dismissed it as something that I was just a dumb kid. But someday I didn't need to worry about it right now. Ethics are complicated, and I most remember from that movie, it's really disturbing, was this thing where he sticks his hand in a box and he's burning it alive. It's not really, but he doesn't know that, and somehow that's supposed to prove that he's not an animal. Fucked me up. I was 4, and my mom was like explaining it to me, and so she seemed to be endorsing whatever weird morality they were throwing at me. So I I have fragments of it in my head. I need to, as an adult, put it all back together. And interesting, I don't really know too much, but I do know that like Dune was before David Lynch was anybody really. He was just a director, lucky to get to direct a movie. It was a big action-y movie, and it was an adaptation of a beloved novel, and that it fails miserably, from what I've heard, on both fronts, as a David Lynch movie, and even more so as an adaptation of a beloved Herbert movie, or book, which sort of sounds like Kubrick and Spartacus a little, but I don't care. I tried to read Dune. It wasn't very good. I mean, it was great. It was just too thick or something. But like, I just could not get through that slog of a book. I got pages in and just said no, thank you. So, anyways, guess that's what we're going with. We're gonna watch Dune. Huzzah, huzzah. And, Dune. So yeah, and then that's why I'm watching it, because it's a David Lynch film, and it haunts my childhood. So, see you soon. This is a transitional scene to symbolize me watching the movie Dune. We're back. Yeah, watch Dune. Wow, that was an experience. It was not what I was expecting. My opinions are not what I was expecting. It was a surprise. Last time I meant to start with sort of a recap, and I didn't. But this time I'm going to do it right, so we're going to start with sort of an overview, synopsis and stuff. So basically, Dune was a massive, epic sci-fi book by Frank Herbert, I think, beloved by lots of people. Like a glorious space epic, and sci-fi. So, yeah. And this movie was an adaptation of the very large, complicated novel. And the plot goes something like, I guess the initial setup sort of like Game of Thrones in space. You have a bunch of like noble families that are all powerful, and most of them, I guess, control a planet or something like that. And the Emperor is like the most powerful one, and he's the leader, he's the emperor of all of them. And so all the action sort of centers around the Emperor, and to a greater extent, these two powerful families. And they basically the good guys and the bad guys, the good family and the bad family, and and there's also like a third group who are they're sort of like this neutral force, um, but they're more powerful than anyone, and they're the I guess navigators guild or something. Basically, they're the ones who make space travel possible, and they're weird and everything. And the way they make space travel possible, there aren't really spaceships. It's about basically space teleporting. They say folding space, and they need this substance called spice to do it. So there's this substance that is the most important substance in the galaxy, and apparently I think it like helps people live forever too, and it's just the uber substance. And so there's this kind of neutral outside group that's the most powerful group, I think maybe more powerful than the Emperor, who helps everybody get around, and they need spice to do it. And spice only comes from this one planet in the entire galaxy, this desert planet called Dune. And so, yeah, one of the Emperor and the bad family sort of conspire together against the good family. The good family, the main character is just this young hero-to-be protagonist guy, prince or something, or Duke Jr. or whatever you want to call it. And like he's just awesome, like at everything from the get-go. And he's just good at stuff. Good at fighting, good at thinking, insightful, smart. Apparently his mom is like some kind of psychic priest of an order of psychic priests. So he's pretty good at all the psychic stuff too. He's good to be a warrior. Good. He's like just good at everything. And his dad loves him. And apparently there's all sorts of crazy shit going on there. But so it's like kind of, I guess, like a coming of age, except when like the person started off awesome, it just gets even more awesome. And so yeah, he goes with his dad, and through some weird machinations, they apparently are in charge of administrating Dune, the planet where all the spice comes from, and they're at war with their enemies there or something, but they're in control of the planet. And then like they're betrayed, and their enemies. Most of the family, most of their power base, and shatter them to pieces. The protagonist guy and his mom escape into the desert and meet a different group of people and wind up leading a rebel uprising against the Empire and the bad guys, and using destiny and prophecies and psychic powers and magic and technology and all kinds of crazy shit, launch this big successful thing against the bad guys and then win in the end. That's the plot, I'd say. And then all this other stuff happens along the way. Lots of other stuff. So much other stuff. And alright, the central tension, I'd say, for understanding this movie is it's the tension between what a movie needs to be and how much fucking detail there is in this book. And just like you could tell that David Lynch and everyone else involved is overwhelmed by the amount of explaining they have to do to make this thing even slightly resemble the book, and it's this central tension that I think is responsible for all of the movie's many failings and charms. It is the lens through which you watch this movie is the production struggle between the amount of story to tell, the amount of detail to work with, and the amount of space in the movie to put this detail. And the detail, I mean,
it's all interlocking in this really specific way. And whatever heart and charm of the story, the original material is there. It's in this large interlocking relationship. It all gets value together and gives each other. So it's like it's not like a collection of short stories. This shit needs each other to stick together, and there's so much of it. And all right, I kind of think that there's like a design principle or whatever about detail. Um, it's like I think that, like, let's say I needed to make a picture, and the picture had to have the sky in it. Um, but there's all this other shit in front of the sky, trees and whatnot. I think the picture is inherently richer if somehow I find a way to paint the entire sky scene, like a painting of the sky, and then stick everything else in front of that, and then rip away all this detail. Waste creates richness, because people sense the parts that aren't there. And there's this hint of so many decisions and so much intricacy. When you're creating something, decision and intricacy is a resource, and you should start from the idea not of using everything you make, but I really want to finish that, but making everything you use just because it sounds nice. But no, that's not what I'm saying at all. You need to make a lot more than you have to be comfortable wasting, so that when you want to have that beautiful shot that has just a little bit of sky, people know implicitly that there's more there, that the sky's really there, even though they can't see it all. And that's what this movie has going for it in a lot of ways, is this bloated pile of intricacy and decision that they have to cut from. But also this duty to try to include as much of it as they feasibly can. I just want to say right here, I love this movie. It was fucking awesome. It was great. It was reviewed terribly, and it was great. I love this movie. Dune is great. But the best way to really look at what's going on in Dune that I can think of is by comparing it to Star Wars, because it feels so like the need to compare them is obvious. I mean, even the main character kind of has a Luke Skywalker-y vibe, and they're both these giant space movies set. And when I say Star Wars, I mean all three of the originals. Set in this big, crazy galactic empire universe with multiple planets and people that travel around between the planets, and like weird mysticism and like this kind of big human story told over these crazy surrealist alien places. Even like a lot of there's a lot. Well, Dune is a desert planet, and Star Wars has a lot of desert scenes. So I mean, and there's sort of spaceshipy things. Despite what I said earlier, there are like spaceship shots of space stations where people go, and like little spaceships take you to the space station. Then the space station does a crazy time warpy thing that gets you where you need to go. So there's There's definitely like that, and there's like crazy Star Wars-y, empire-y, wild costumes and shit. So like the need for comparison is there, and it's obvious. But why, and I think that's why so many people might be turned off of this movie, is because everything about it screams that this could have been Star Wars, but it couldn't, and it didn't. And why aren't I watching Star Wars? Because Star Wars is easy to watch and love, and it's just there and pulls you through, and it's great and entertaining. So I think comparing it to Star Wars is the way to go, because it's a very different film than Star Wars, and if you grade it by the same set of standards that makes Star Wars great, you're gonna hate this movie. But the difference is that the weighty pile of content, of material to work with Dune. Star Wars wasn't an adaptation of the Star Wars book. He was making that shit up as he went along, and for the most part, I mean, their theory, or he claims to have a bunch of it mapped out in his head, but it was like clearly not like something he had to be faithful to at any point. Whereas that's the difference with Dune. So, all right. Another great thing about this that we need to get into is Dune has this crazy awesome list of people involved with it, mainly actors, but like that I forgot some of these. I knew some of these somehow, but I forgot most of it. First off, Patrick Stewart, Captain Picard, is there, being awesome. I think this might have been his first sci-fi role, and he's just there as a side character. It's pretty cool. Sting is there, and honestly, I think Sting turned in the best performance of the whole movie. They barely give him any lines, but he's haunting. A bunch of the main character, Captain Protagonist Pants, is Kyle MacLachlan from Twin Peaks fame and other David Lynchiness, I think. So, obviously this is a David Lynch film, and seeing Kyle MacLachlan there just makes you feel welcome if you're coming at it from that angle like I did. And there are some other Twin Peaks alumni, even though this happened first. Jack Nance, who plays old guy, I think Ed on Twin Peaks. Not Ed. I'm blanking on the guy's name, but he's the guy who just, "There's a fish in the percolator." That guy. He was in there. I think maybe Big Ed Hurley, but I may have been. Anyways, I think there's some others. Toto, the keyboardy band Toto. Weren't they the ones that did Africa, I take way down in Africa? Anyways, they do like virtually all the music. Brian Eno did like one song. Everything else is Toto. And they did a great job, by the way. The music is really cool, stands out, I thought. And oh god, who else was involved? There were some others. We got. I took some notes. Oh yeah. Okay, well there were others, but those were the ones that really stuck out to me. And so it has that just going for it right there. So first off, let's get into comparing this to Star Wars a little. Let's look at the overall structure of the story and the events. Now, mind you, Star Wars had 3 movies to tell its gripping tale, whereas this all kind of needed to be crammed into one movie, and or did it? Anyways, it was crammed into one movie, and Star Wars structure is way better from a typical story that you can follow, ups and downs and rises and climbs and tension and resolution and all that. And Star Wars was so much better in that way, because they're certainly more accessible, because even if you just take the first Star Wars movie, there's a whole story there, and they spend the right amount of time in all the parts the development of the story, and the conclusion is satisfying, and the denouement is decent, and then like same thing can pretty much be said if you look at the trilogies as a whole. The trilogy as a whole thing. But I'm gonna think Empire Strikes Back is a little overrated. So it felt like a meander and not at all like a climax, which you think the second movie would, kind of peak a little higher. But whatever, either was fine. Dune, the structure is just a mess. Again, I liked it, but that was like one of the things you just kind of have to accept. Like sometimes you can have a really great time at a bar if you can just accept from the outset that it smells terrible. And if you can get past that, there are great people, great times to be had, great booze, conversation, music. And for this, it was like, the structure is going to be a nightmare. It's going to go way too fast, way too slow, way too... and you feel for the movie as you're watching it. It's like, oh, poor movie, you have so much you need to say, and you know you don't have enough time. Okay, I'll give you that 10 years summarized as by a narrator. Okay, whatever. So there's that. Structure. What else am I going to say? Consult my notes. Now, visuals. This is where I think the movie really, really shines, is the visuals. In terms of... I have the benefit of watching the movie unclear exactly when it happened. I could tell it happened somewhere in the 70s, 80s, 90s. I knew it wasn't the 90s, but... And the special effects level seemed really good when I compared it to Star Wars, which, to be fair, I think this movie is like contemporary with the last Star Wars movie, and the visuals were so much better. It's a beautiful film to watch, just an orgy for the eyes. And it's about... Star Wars has like spectacular things it shows you, like big giant spaceships and space stations, or wild planets with weird vegetation and little furry creatures that dance around. But the way it shows it to you is, it's like it's trying to communicate everything it needs to communicate. Whereas the way that the Dune shows you things is, each scene is crafted lovingly to look beautiful and be expressive. And even the way things are arranged and the color use seems deliberate somehow, like it's following some system you don't understand. And the color use is so good. Star Wars, the spaceship scenes might as well have been filmed in black and white. Same for like Star Trek and sci-fi generally. Like, why does space have to be black and white? I know that when you're looking up at the sky at night, it's kind of black and whitey, but not really. I mean, there are usually colors swirling around in the atmosphere and stuff. And if you look at Venus, she's got this kind of cool amber hue going. But for some reason, sci-fi thinks space needs to be black and white. And space stations, look at the Death Star, look at all of the other spaceships in Star Wars. Everything's black and white. And the lighting is just white. And occasionally there are flashes of orange for explosion. But the space scenes in this, to contrast, they have like dual color scheme, like red and green lights coming in different angles at different directions, highlighting things in the ways. But it's not just empty color. It makes the scene feel vivid, and the costumes and everything. Every scene looks crafted. It's so pretty, and feels meaningful, and it's emotionally stirring. It's like a dream. Every scene is like dream imagery. So the visuals right there alone kind of just blow Star Wars away. How else can we compare them? I wanted to get into... on sci-fi movies. First off, there's a myth going around that Star Wars is a sci-fi film. It's not really. It's like a kung fu film in space with like science isn't there. It's like if they need the science to like make a big crazy spectacle, they'll say put her in hyperdrive, and then there's a big scientific-y flash of colors and plot point, and they're somewhere else. But there's like not a lot of science there. There's not a lot of like sci-fi creativity of actually imagining new technologies and or different ways of being. It's almost like sci-fi science is magic in Star Wars, and like, look, now we're on a new planet, and look how weird the creatures look. This one's covered in fur. This one's covered in fur, but he's short. This one has a green hat, but he's playing a trombone, or a green skin, but he's playing a trombone. But like, it's just kind of this blur of nonsense. Whereas Dune is a sci-fi film. There's like unnecessary or to the plot little sci-fi flourishes, like the way they travel around, the folding of space. That's a lot more based in theoretical physics and stuff than put her in hyperdrive. And then like, oh, I mean, they got to wear these suits that like when they're in the desert collect their water and like clean it for them and then let them drink it again, and they explain in detail how the suits work and like why they have to wear them, and even kind of where they come from. The suits in Star Wars are never explained. They're just props. They're just window dressing or whatever, or I guess Jedi dressing. And yeah, even the lightsaber barely makes any fucking sense. Yeah, but the stuff in the movie, there's so much weird little science things, and they explain they give you an idea of the working parts, and lots of times they're based on real kind of out there sciencey ideas and stuff. What's more, Star Wars could have happened anywhere, and just been restripped. You could probably adapt Star Wars to Gangland Chicago, or whatever. Dune needs the alien stuff for the plot to be anything at all, because everyone's motivations are a little alien. Everyone's interactions are alien. Star Wars does this thing where, since it's not actually pulling from material, it's not building the concepts for you, it relies on meme to fill in the blanks. Like Luke staying with farmers. Okay, never really shows what that means. Farmers on a desert planet in space, but you've already got Uncle Owen down. In some ways, he's a simple farmer, and everything we know about farmers apply to Owen. Like, okay, got him. Next concept to grasp. Really easy. They rely on you and what you already know to build the story for them. But the characters in Dune, you don't, even when it's kind of a familiar term like Emperor, you don't know what Emperor means in this context, and they communicate that to you, and the entire time you're watching an Emperor, you're not knowing exactly. I mean, the first scene, the Emperor is like just treated like a little bitch by like the head of the guild, the Navigator Guild, and you're like, oh, so the Emperor's not really in charge. He's just a player. Okay, I don't know what an Emperor means in this context, and that's the way everything is. Like they take away your assumption that you know what's going on, and then they start giving you the pieces you need to build whatever, all the concepts. Which it's a different way of telling a story. It's because the pieces matter more. In Star Wars, the pieces they're there to make you feel zing and oh, okay, evil empire or rugged outlaw or farmer and like I got who this is and move along. But this is like to show you how all the pieces interact, or at least give you a glimmer of it and let you put it together. It creates its own rules, its own physics of I mean, of the world, the way things are held together. So yeah, that's a big difference. Is the way that they're both sci-fi, or the way that Dune is sci-fi more, and we did structure. Yeah, and in Dune, the characters, because you don't know what's going on, and they all do, they feel alien, and you like the good guys. You're like, why'd you do that? Okay, and like you don't really trust them. I mean, you trust they're the good guys. That's pretty clear the entire time. Just the way, oh, these are the good guys, and the bad guys are the bad guys, which typically I'm not a big fan of. But in this context, it helped it be what it is. But because they're alien, you have a hard time relating to like any of the characters. No one really seems to be driven by a lot of like relatable emotions, and none of the characters ever get a lot of time to like. You don't really see the personalities unfold. The story feels cold, emotionally cold, and I can see how that would turn a lot of people off. Star Wars, no. Star Wars, because no one's actually an alien. Everyone's just people. Even like the Wookiee is kind of a person. C-3PO, the robot, he's just a guy with a guy personality, and you get to just see his personality, and see the characters interact, and know that everyone wants the same things you want, more or less. But because Dune doesn't have that, and because it's more alien, you don't relate to the characters as well. And by and large, most of them aren't good, and there are very good characters, like memorable in a great way. And the ones that are don't do it by being relatable. They do it by being enigmatic and interesting. And that's the core of the Star Wars, I guess, story kind of difference. Is Star Wars is telling you this big overarching story that's like characters, likable characters, and exciting. Imagination, tantalizing, crazy, over-the-top places and scenes, reenacting a predictable story that we've heard told, 100 times more. With it's archetypical. The characters are warm, and we relate to them almost as people, but also it tickles us tickles our brain by telling a story that we've heard told before, and like Luke, I am your father, sort of like. I'm sure there are dozens of stories in all genres which have almost every plot point in Star Wars in them, and often configured in similar ways. And a lot of there's value in that, when it sort of reawakens these ancient stories that are the fabric of the thought that we inherit. Built into our language is a sort of connection to ancient Greece and ancient Rome, and then the Middle Ages, and we inherit all of this, and it shapes our expectations for stories. And, so yeah, Star Wars, I think, hits a lot of like really good archetypical bells, whereas this, it finds a different way to scratch us under the surface, to tickle things in our brains, not through archetype, not through letting us feel like we're participating in the ancient human art of storytelling, but almost, surprise, David Lynch, almost like we're watching a dream, or it talks to the part of our brain that dreams, or the part of our brain that remembers dreams the next day and doesn't understand why, and tries to put the pieces together and has a hard time. That's the part of the brain that this movie really speaks to, I think. And so a lot of the failings and virtues of the story are because it's doing something different. It's not it's the structure isn't that important. The characters, even like the character arcs, aren't that important. It's about the situations that get created on the screen and all of the things they sort of imply moment to moment. And because the visuals are so beautiful, you can watch it in this moment-to-moment way, where things are getting established, and the situation provides sort of the context, the syntax for what you're seeing. So the details are relevant. It has to happen, in the order it happens and everything, and you have to indulge their need to explain plot points and things to you to set up all of these moments. But the movie is about moment to moment, scene to scene, and that's rewarding. It's challenging. I could see how critics and film goers would just see this and be like, "No, dude, I'm watching a movie about space. I don't want to work. I don't want to strive to understand and like memorize these complex relationships and stuff. Give me rebels and bad guys and I started this out by telling you the plot, and it sounded pretty empty and shallow, and like there wasn't that much there. That's because I just told you the parts which actually encompass that standard like plot progression. There's so much of the plot that can't really be explained without going into nuance and detail, and lots of it is left sort of a mystery. It gives you this feeling that everything you see belongs into some sort of weird science, weird interlocking set of relationships. Yes, numinous is the word, and I like Carl Jung a lot. That's why I picked up the word numinous. When you watch a David Lynch film, there's a good chance if you know Jung, that's coming to your mind, and it's numinous. The only way Star Wars is numinous is by tapping into sort of this ancient archetypical story thing and almost telling us a story we already know. But this is numinous by giving us moments of imagery and events, but you're never actually seeing half of what's happening. That there's the rest is being implied some way. Why did I put on here dialogue? Guys, I mean, the dialogue's not very good in the movie. No, like the characters don't really display themselves through the dialogue much. Yeah. Alright. Anyways. Oh yeah, now I remember what the dialogue thing. They did something kind of interesting and cool because they had so many little details they had to fill in. That they often throughout the film, you look at them and their lips aren't moving, but you hear their voice, and they kind of establish their own little system of storytelling there, where it's like quick voiceover tells you what that character's thinking, which is interesting for adapting a book. I'm surprised that hasn't been tried more. But it does get a little confusing because some of the characters are psychic, and so sometimes it's unclear to me, like, am I hearing this character's thoughts because this psychic character is here, and so is that communicating to me that, oh, this character overheard that character saying that? Or am I just overhearing those characters' thoughts sort of a stylized way just to show me what that character's thinking? And I'm not sure they always have the answer to that question, which is a little problematic. But overall, I thought it was really interesting. Once you kind of get used to it, it's like, yeah, that feels right. Like, why doesn't this happen more? I would like to see more movies where where you just get to hear the character's thoughts real quick. Like all the characters, even side characters and stuff. So yeah, I thought that was kind of cool. But that said, like, the dialogue was not good. Because the characters were, like, not very meaning as personalities, most of them. Meaningful. They were more meaningful as beings, figures. Oh, now I get to the part I really want to talk about, which is my experience that I had watching the movie. Because, like I said earlier, I watched this movie when I was 4. I didn't remember watching. I remembered a few flashes of it. I mainly remember like watching my parents watch it. But as I watched this film, I felt parts of my brain reawakening after, God, 20-something years. Like, I was 4, I'm 31 now, so that's, like, almost 30-year-old memories coming to the surface, and I realized how much of an impact this movie has had on my entire life. The way that the imagery in there, like, when I've made characters in my various creative endeavors, I see now, oh my God, the flash of imagery that inspires him. I think that came from Dune. They're ways I categorize real people I meet in my head and have since the time I was a kid. I watched that movie and just had this awakening when I realized that Dune had shaped a lot of kind of my software, the way that I lived. I guess because it was so early and one of the first things I experienced with that much like darkness and depth and colorful imagery. David Lynch has been in me all along as part of what the experience I had, and the most numinous thing of the whole film for me is probably every scene with Sting. He was so great in that character. He plays sort of like the foil to the main. He's like the young, attractive guy of the bad guys. So he's like the young rival of the good guy, I guess. And like, they set it up well, or whatever. He has so much charisma, and the colors they use, the way that all the bad guys are this family with red hair that like has a certain design aesthetic and stuff. It's haunting, and you just watch it and you're just drawn in. And him especially, you just quake with expectation every time he is on the scene because he feels designed for some grand purpose. Which brings me to one of the only things I actually don't like about the movie is the ending. It was kind of stupid. Like, first off, this promise that they did so much where you kind of expect Sting to kill the main guy, like, in a way that, like, it's like he was Gollum or something. You know something big's coming from Gollum. There's some reason in Lord of the Rings. You know that something big is coming from him, and they set up all these things that you expect a destiny from this character. And it's nothing. It's like in the end, the good guy kills him real quick, and like that's it. All of those, he has almost no dialogue. He just has this look of determination on his face. Well, it cuts away, and like you feel something that never comes to pass, and I think should have come to pass. I don't know if I'm criticizing David Lynch or Frank Herbert here, but but you should have had Sting's character kill the main guy in the end somehow. That would have brought it. And the other dumb thing about the ending, lots of dumb things about the ending, because like in the ending, it kind of has to stop being as much about patiently crafting scenes, and then they just need to give you like a thing that wraps up the movie, like the plot. And I mean, there was some cool imagery and some of that numinous imagery in the last scenes. But like what's going on is kind of dumb, and it's like the good. And that's like the problem with the plot as a plot is like generally I am not a fan of the whole chosen one thing in films when like there's some mystical important thing about this character all along, because it's usually like Luke Skywalker is a great example. You know, he's midi-chlorines, the Force is strong in this one. Turns out he's the bad guy's son. He's this chosen one, but he's this humble little farmer. I think it's stupid because, I mean, the only way it connects is in this archetypical way, because we have legends. Like, that's the way our legends all go, is people are chosen ones, and their greatness later on somehow ripples back to their story at the beginning. But it's so hard to relate to that personally, because like that's not the way life is. I mean, even like our chosen ones, like people who ascend to great heights, like usually the story is in the causality of how they got there, the little things that put them there, the little decisions that put them there, not some grand destiny pulling them along, because people don't have that in their lives when they're watching a movie. So it's like, oh, this guy's got a chosen one. It would be cool if I had a destiny. It would be cool if I had a destiny. But I don't. I just have to get by on the things I do, adding up to the things that I am. So I always think it's a cop-out. It's like, and they usually tell you pretty early on that, ooh, he's the chosen one, and then and so in that regard, I think chosen one thing is stupid, but like, this is a particularly ham-handed chosen one story, because in the beginning, the main guy, like at least Skywalker started out as like a promising hick farmer. This guy starts out as like king badass, aristocrat, awesome, the best warrior, best young warrior any of his teachers have ever trained. It's kind of like Ender's Game syndrome all over it. It's just like, will this extreme winner win again? Look, he wins even more! Keep winning, winner! You're the winningest! Oh my god, no one knows. And like, that thing where it's like he enters into a situation and people are like, there's no way you're gonna win. Chosen one winner guy. Oh my god, chosen guy winner won again. Wow, what a winner. Like, from the very beginning, like even after they just show that he's king badass and he's great at everything, then like, even though he has no confidence, like he's still like coming of age, because he's like young and like timid and okay, listening to people around him, but everyone around him is telling him how great he is, and but pretty early on, they throw on top of that, like, the actual mystical, legendy, prophecy stuff, where, like, early on, people start, could he be, and they've got some ridiculous name, the Quadramalefica, blah, 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 like, the Messiah? I don't know, maybe. Like, they start doing that early on, and then they just hammer that in the entire time throughout the movie, and so it's like, yes, this supreme winner at everything is the chosen one, we get this, and he barely has any setbacks. As Captain Chosen One Pants. So, like, it's like the typical Chosen One problems, like, times 10. Which is why we find our value elsewhere when we are enjoying this movie. We don't find it in the archetypical plot, because it's a bad execution of that archetype. And we don't find it in the relatable human plot, because these characters are not relatable. They are aliens. And even the most humany humans in there are not playing with the same deck of cards we are. And you get that. So it's kind of... It's not... like... It's not Star Wars. It looks like Star Wars, and I can see how a lot of people would want it to be Star Wars, but it's, if you can get past that fact that while it's bad at being Star Wars, it's better at Star Wars, than Star Wars at being Dune, then you're going places with this film. So on that note, I'm not done yet, but on that note, I am going to, I think, summarize rate the film. And I like to rate things based on I find value where it is rather than hold something to a standard. So if you can know where to look for the value in this film, it is overflowing in value. 8 is sort of my typical, I really like this, and I would like to watch this a lot of times kind of thing. I would give it 8. I think the other day I gave it to the TV show Dexter, which is just like entertaining. It's not life-changing, but it's really good. And like I could watch so much of that series over and over and over. And like this is it as like rewatchable? I mean, I could watch Dune multiple times and get a lot of value out of it. But, like, it's the choice to watch Dune. Dune is a commitment because it's think-intensive and it's feel-intensive. This would be a great candidate for watching on drugs. Like, way better than the one, like, 2001 Space Odyssey, I think. Actually, I can't remember much of that one. But, like, what's the other one? Pink Floyd, The Wall. This would be such a great, just get blasted and, like, watch film for all of you hippies out there, because it would tingle with your mind. It's just like you're not always going to be in the mood for that. Like it is more challenging. It's not relaxing to watch. So even though it's not as rewatchable as something like Dexter and some of the other stuff, that's kind of my default thing. I just give to something I like. I think that it, in its way, it's better. At least as good. I'm going to reluctantly give this an 8. Feels right. An 8. So that's 8 out of 10 for Dune. And now I want to get a little bit into development hell of Dune, because I mean I didn't really know much of this. I just kind of read about it afterwards, but there's some interesting stuff there. So this film apparently took a long time to make, and there were several versions of it that almost got made while it was languishing in development hell, as they say. And there was some other version which almost came together, which, like, the DNA of that version is still sort of on the one that got made, even though a lot of the people involved wound up getting replaced. And it didn't come to form in that way. Salvador Dali was going to play the Emperor, and Mick Jagger was going to play Sting's role. There are a bunch of other cool stuff like that. Like that one probably would have come together pretty cool, but it couldn't come together. Apparently there were like something like 10 different rewrites of this massive script. Like numerous people labored over getting this damn thing onto the screen. H.R. Geiger, artist, he's the guy who designed Aliens, and a lot of the team from Aliens. Basically, the movie Aliens grew out of the frustrations and attempts of people who were attached to a version of this movie in production. So in a lot of ways, Alien was born out of Dune. And some other big sci-fi thing you could say the same thing about. I can't remember which one. Shit. But anyways, like, yeah, it was important for the industry because almost the process of making Dune was sort of a cottage industry unto itself that spawned a lot of talent and gave people a lot of ideas, and then like a lot of that got inherited by Lynch and his team when he was put in charge. Which brings me to, apparently he got put in charge because he did well on Elephant Man. So apparently I should have started with Elephant Man if I wanted to get chronological on my lynchings. But next time I draw David Lynch, I'll do Elephant Man, I think. But yeah, so David Lynch just flaunted the fact that I didn't read the book, and I'm not interested in the book, and I don't even like sci-fi, but I'm going to make this movie, so fuck you, fans. Which I think a lot of fans felt. And young David Lynch had a lot of things he wanted to do here. And he kind of viewed it as this empty vehicle to do things that Lynch wanted to do, which would infuriate me if I were an average movie goer or a fan of Herbert. But I'm a fan of Lynch. That's the reason I'm here. So the fact that like he carved out so much Herbert and inserted Lynch in there is just like thrilled me to no end. And because the lead guy is McLaughlin from Twin Peaks, it sticks out so much. How much like actual just Twin Peaks is lifted from the shit he was trying to do in Dune. Like there is like whole scenes in Twin Peaks just like there's the same scene in Dune. Just ideas. But some of the side. Oh, now I get just some of the specifics of the cool stuff they did in Dune. There's this awesome like bad CG but still pretty cool like personal shield that people have, like this force field with like this walking poly. There are just some cool ass scenes in this movie. Just especially like if you're a pothead, which I'm not really, but I mean whatever. I could see how potheads who like to get stoned and watch movies could just have a blast with this film. So yeah, I think I've been talking about Dune long enough, but I was really surprised at how good this was. Great it was, even. Shook me to my core. Anyway, see you guys soon, and thanks for watching. I guess I'll keep on doing it.